Most investors think they know their numbers. They add up the mortgage, the insurance, the maintenance, and the tax, and congratulate themselves for making a good investment. But after working with hundreds of property investors, I can tell you there's one cost that everyone keeps ignoring. And it's one that can cost you £55,000 over the course of 20 years. So in this video, I'll show you the hidden cost most landlords ignore, why it drains your portfolio more than you think, and 4 ways to protect yourself so your returns don't vanish overnight. So I was speaking to an investor recently who just bought his second rental. He showed me his spreadsheet with all the numbers carefully laid out. Mortgage, insurance, maintenance, tax, every box ticked. And on paper, it looked great. Strong yield, mortgage covered, nice profit left over. But when I asked him what he'd budgeted for a tenant moving out, he just looked at me blankly. It hadn't even crossed his mind. And that is the problem. Because when a tenant leaves, everything changes. You've suddenly got weeks, maybe months, with no rent coming in. You're paying agents to re-let, spending money on cleaning and touch-ups, and sinking hours into admin you hadn't planned for. And it's not a rare event. It can happen again and again, turning what seemed like a safe, predictable investment into a financial headache and a massive waste of your time. That's why we created How to Invest in Property When You Have No Time. It shows you how to build a hands-off portfolio that grows over time without taking too much time away from your family, job, or business. And you'll find the link in the description. Now let's actually put some numbers to tenant turnover, because once you see the real cost, you'll understand why it's such a silent killer of returns. Now, let's say you're renting out a 2-bedroom flat in Manchester for £1,500 a month. The tenants, Fred and Julie, are every landlord's dream. They always pay rent on time, they keep the place in good condition, and they never bother you unless there's a genuine problem. You sleep well at night knowing your mortgage is covered, the cash flow is steady, and you won't be asked to change a light bulb in the middle of the night. Then, one day, Fred calls out of the blue and announces that they're moving to Scotland. You've not done anything wrong, and there's nothing you can do to make them stay. They're just giving notice. At first you think, fine, I'll just have to find another tenant. But you're in for a nasty surprise. Because unless you find someone to move in the day after Fred and Julie move out, you're out of pocket. If your property is empty for 2 weeks, that's you £750 down. Empty for a month, and you're £1,500 worse off. Even if you do find a replacement quickly and they're ready to move in straight away, such a tight turnover can be a logistical nightmare. Because even with good tenants like Fred and Julie, there'll normally be some kind of touch-ups of the paintwork or a worn-out carpet to replace. The kind of wear and tear that you can't take from their deposit. You might even need to replace a few pieces of furniture if you're letting it furnished. All this could easily set you back £500 or more. Then comes the reletting fee to your agent. That's typically 1 month's rent, less if you're lucky, but sometimes more. So that's another £1,500 gone. And don't forget your own time. The calls to agents, the emails, the paperwork. Even if you don't put a cash figure on that, that's time you're not spending with family, on your main job, or finding your next investment. Add it all up, and one tenant leaving and giving you a 2-week gap, which really isn't much, can cost you £2,750.64. Potentially half a year's profit wiped out in one go. If that happens every year, over the course of a 20-year landlord career, this could set you back £55,000. If the market's a bit slow or the timing's unlucky, it could cost you even more. I've seen landlords struggle through 3 or even 4-month void periods. And if you've got multiple properties, this won't just happen once. It could be every year or more across different units, slowly draining away the returns you thought you'd locked in. But here's the good news. If you can stretch each tenancy from 1 year to 3 years on average, you end up clawing back around £38,500 of that loss. How do you do that? Let me show you. Because I know this might all sound unavoidable, but tenants don't always leave for reasons you can't control. Often they leave because they choose to, and that is where psychology comes in. Now, you might be thinking, well, when tenants leave because of a life change, there's nothing you can do. And sometimes that's true. People move for work, move in with a partner, or buy their first home, and no landlord can prevent that. But here's what most investors get wrong. Not every move is inevitable. A surprising number of tenants leave simply because they choose to. Think about it from their perspective. They scroll Rightmove, they see something newer, shinier, maybe just a bit closer to work or with a slightly bigger kitchen, and they start weighing it up. Is it worth the hassle of packing boxes, changing addresses, and risking a dodgy landlord, or should I just stay put? And that decision is rarely just about the property itself. It's about how they feel. Do they feel like they're looked after? Do they feel like the rent is fair? Do they feel like their home is improving over time? If the answer to these questions is no, suddenly that shiny flat down the road feels like a no-brainer. But once you understand the psychology, you can, in a nice way, take advantage of it. Because as a landlord, your job isn't to make a property perfect. It's to make the risk of moving seem bigger than the benefit. Because the truth is, moving house is stressful. Most tenants will happily stay where they are if they feel valued, if the rent increases are manageable, and if the property still feels like a decent place to live. That means tenant retention isn't just about saving money, but about psychology. It's about creating an environment where tenants think, I could move, but actually, why would I? So, how do you create that feeling? Well, across my portfolio, I have one set of tenants who've been there for 8 years, another for 6, and another for 4. They're not all like that, but I do better than average. And I put it down to 4 rules that I've developed to help keep good tenants for longer. To understand the first one, I want you to imagine getting an email from a tenant about a niggling problem. A week passes, they haven't heard back, and they have to chase you again. They're left wondering if you even care, and they start thinking about what life would be like with a more responsive landlord. Now compare that to getting a quick reply within 24 hours. Thanks for flagging it, I've logged it with the contractor, here's the timescale, I'll keep you updated. So, if you want to keep good tenants for longer, the first thing you need to do is respond quickly to maintenance issues. Even if the actual fix takes weeks, that reassurance makes tenants feel valued and lets them know that they haven't been forgotten. Now let's imagine that you're the tenant this time. You've been paying the same rent for 3 years. Then one day, a letter drops through your door. Your landlord's increasing the rent by £150 a month. Such a large and sudden increase out of the blue feels like a slap in the face. And suddenly, moving feels a lot more tempting, even though you might still end up paying the higher price once you move because rents have gone up across the board. But what if your landlord had raised the rent by £50 each year, rather than hitting you with a massive increase all in one go? Small, predictable, easy to plan for. By the time 3 years pass, you're paying the same amount as you would have done if the increase had been instant, but it doesn't sting quite as much. So if you want to avoid pushing good tenants out of the door, the second rule is simple. Make rent increases small and regular. Every year, check what other properties like yours in the area are renting for, and if it merits an increase, go for it. I always recommend keeping increases to slightly below what your tenants could get elsewhere, so you're rewarding them for their loyalty and they're even less likely to leave. But the key is to do it regularly, not in a sudden one-off when you start paying attention and notice they're paying way less than they should be. It keeps tenants on side, it protects your cash flow, and it makes staying put feel like the safer, easier choice. For the third rule, I want you to imagine your tenant has been in the property for a few years. The walls are looking a bit tired, the carpet's seen better days, and that once white bathroom now feels more off cream. They don't hate the place, but then they view a flat down the road that's just been refurbished. Fresh paint, brand new carpets, shiny fittings. Suddenly, the hassle of moving feels worth it. Now, imagine instead that every couple of years, you've given your place a light refresh, a repaint here, a carpet replacement there. By following this third rule, proactively maintain and refresh your property, the new flat down the road will be less enticing, and you'll hopefully get your tenants to stay put longer. You don't even need to do anything drastic. The last thing your tenants want is to be living off microwave meals for a fortnight while their kitchen is ripped out. I'm talking about small changes that make the place feel modern and cared for. It also spreads out your costs and means that when they do leave, you won't suddenly be facing a massive bill to get it looking appealing for viewings again. Now, even if your property's in good condition, you're quick to reply, and you increase the rent gradually, there's one more thing that you might be overlooking. Think about the last time you dealt with a big, faceless company. Endless phone menus, canned responses, nobody taking ownership. It can be extremely frustrating. And tenants feel the same when their landlord is invisible or unapproachable. What most tenants want is simple. Someone who communicates clearly, responds reliably, and treats them with respect. Someone they can count on. So the fourth rule is this: keep communication direct, warm, and professional. And keep in mind that being too involved can cause just as many problems. Landlords don't want a tenant who pops around unannounced or tries to be their best friend. If you don't want to drive your tenants away, you need to strike a balance. And if you follow these 4 rules, you'll usually find that your tenants choose to stay year after year. Because when the benefits of moving shrink, suddenly your tenants start to think, actually, I'd rather just stay where I am. And that is how you cut out one of the biggest hidden costs in property. Not by finding better tenants, but by keeping the good ones you already have. But even if you follow these rules to the letter none of it will matter if you buy the wrong property in the first place. A bad property will always struggle to attract, let alone keep, great tenants. That's why you should watch this video next, where I show you the red flags to look out for before you buy, so you don't end up stuck with a property that costs you money from day one.